Okay. And Melvina and I are going to go through this PowerPoint together. We're going to be sharing certain portions of the PowerPoint. So we're ready to begin. Melvina?
Okay. All right. So public relations, it's the fellowship's link that we create with the public. Rather, public information and public relations is the approach we use to do so. Can you see that, John?
Yes. And the purpose of an H&I meeting is to carry the message of recovery to addicts who do not have full access to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. The importance of PI collaboration along with H&I is because H&I members generally do not have the information of facts and figures needed when we go into a facility. A lot of times, new facilities would like Narcotics Anonymous to come in and bring a presentation, but they're not familiar with our fellowship and a lot of our guidelines. And so this is why it's one of the most important things that we collaborate with the Public Information Committee in order to be able to work together in unity to carry the message to the addicts who still suffers.
Okay, so these are the subcommittee roles. Public relations generally sends emails out to connect with professionals. They'll create a bunch of contacts to do that. They'll also do presentations and PowerPoints, and they send out mailings inviting them to presentations, in addition to sending literature to facilities.
And the H&I portion is that we work with correction centers to get clearances, come into correction centers. Of course, the committee members are trained to vet the speakers to make sure they carry a clear message of Narcotics Anonymous using Narcotics Anonymous language. Many areas have their own training and orientation process where members are brought through an orientation package and must attend a few trainings before they're able to bring a presentation in by themselves. We serve as a consistent point of contact at the facilities, the members that take commitments, and some areas have their own sponsorship behind the walls, and some areas combine that with H&I. Also, there are actually some areas that are hurting for service members right now that have combined H&I and PI together because it's so hard to get people to step into positions and serve. So every area is a little bit different about how the two committees work together. Some work a lot more closely than others.
Okay, so the term collaboration means that two entities are working together to perform a task. So customarily, public relations and Narcotics Anonymous H&I generally has collaborated when there has not been contact with a facility in the past, a new facility that they want to go in and speak to, whether it's H&I or a treatment center that they've never been to, or a mental health facility.
Yeah, but and sometimes also the Public Relations or Public Information Committee can help if there's a problem. Sometimes there'll be issues that come up when we're serving at a particular facility. And at those times, we can utilize the members of the Public Information Committee to remind the facilities of who we are and what we do. I did an H&I commitment in Staten Island, New York at one time, and the facility called me, and I did have some PI experience as well. And they said, we had no one wanted to take this particular commitment because they were giving the clients a lot of medication. And basically the clients were nodding throughout the whole presentation and they were inattentive. So it was very hard to get someone to take a commitment at this facility. And the facility person wanted H&I there though. And so she called me up and she's like, well, can't you force anyone to do this? You know, we really need you here. There's, you know, I was like, well, ma'am, I'd like to inform you that Narcotics Anonymous is a nonprofit fellowship where our members are volunteers and they serve. They're not paid to come up there. And this information is very important because especially with the outcome now of RCOs and peer recovery people, who some people do get paid for doing that. It's important that we remind facilities that we serve at that our members are volunteers that are not paid, and clear that up. And we rely on public information to help us with the facts and figures and numbers of our outcomes and how successful we've been as a fellowship. So how I smoothed it out with that lady was, I explained to her, I didn't tell her that we thought she was giving the clients too much medication, by the way, because I couldn't tell her that. But what I could tell her was that we would work as a committee to bring up that commitment at every our committee meeting, and continually ask people to come and serve at that particular facility. And we would try to get someone to come there. You know, I didn't guarantee it, I didn't promise it, but I did promise that we would continue to bring that commitment up as an open commitment. These are all important parts of communication, and I could have never done that without some training in public information. So I thank the committee for helping me with that.
Yeah, I think the other collaboration point is the Department of Corrections. And depending on the difficulties with getting clearances, a lot of times public relations will have to do recursive calls, and it's usually during 9 to 5, right? So calling, emailing, tracking down people, calling back and following up with that. That's the other point where we do that.
And one of the points we actually got from an RCO yesterday at the Professionals Day, who managed to get a presentation into the prisons, is something we're going to talk about later on in H&I. And that's to keep on knocking at the door until they let you in. You know, and you can't just say, oh, if they say no, you don't just turn around and walk away. You got to keep on knocking and knocking until they let you in. Persistency and consistency pay off. Again, it's important that we get help from PI, because a lot of H&I members have work during the day, and during the day is when a lot of these people need to be contacted.
So at this point, we're going to ask people who are here in the room and the people online, if you could just kind of turn to each other and take like a minute to share about any perceptions that you have between H&I and public relations, the challenges with them working together. And people online, I guess you can't turn to your neighbor, but you might want to put in the chat perceptions about challenges between public relations and public information. So go.
Okay. Perceptions, experience, both.
Yeah, so you guys can.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So yeah, you're gonna take like maybe 30 seconds or so to just talk about any challenges or perceptions.
You can perceive challenges.
I don't have perceived, I have actual.
Okay. I guess I'm.
So we have issues because
And tell me, I'm married.
I can't say
I'm from, it's the western area of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And-
And from
Well,
my
thank you,
point of
Chris.
view, too, it's so much
I'm
of
here.
anyone that is, and then.
Awesome.
decision for public relations or representative for our actions.
Nobody chatting.
We
Yeah.
kind of
Two.
developed Tennessee.
have
recently,
challenges
is,
because of our
approval through the
Yeah, wasn't known how
Go through,
facility.
Yeah.
DRC now.
And then
There's an alternative with an ordinance. It's
Yeah.
And it
But
was-
you can be.
Okay, I can totally relate to that.
And we're
Processes of the state, and you're
We-
basically.
so-
badged to go
So
to
we
that.
have in our area,
So
we
not-
are currently,
not the-
I'm our region coach.
or incarcerated.
Okay.
So I say that to let you know that
We right now, we
we
don't
will
have
be
a
month of the
daycare.
for me
We've got about
here.
9,
Here is H&I care as well, right? I can't do that. So I got her serving at the
out
region.
of which
Right.
we
So,
have
Janet-
7.
So for that reason,
Since you guys just came in, you guys are.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, we kind of broke into small areas. I'm so
But we have vacancies in HI, so.
And we have facilities that we are serving a significant amount of facilities we were serving prior.
I have like that for Right.
Well, here's the thing.
I brought it.
All right, thank you.
I think the time to be open. I didn't see anything in the chat.
So we're not
I can't
starting.
get to
I see, I could see it here.
Why are they
Yeah,
not
no,
the same?
we're still getting-
But why aren't I suggesting that we merge these two committees?
Some are, and that's what we were talking about right before you walked in, but some areas are, and they're.
Some regions are.
Maine,
That
they
is
are.
weekly.
See, I just got relocated to Boston.
So if
You're in Boston?
I'm in Boston now.
Right now, we're going to 2 weeks.
It's been challenged right now because
Oh, the last meetings are slowing down.
I think the thing that I find interesting is they're very just as young, go in and vote. And it's very different roles and responsibilities for HNI.
Right,
But they're not the same. But in Florida, the Palm Coast area and the Mid Coast area have somebody that.
So are you part of Northern Georgia?
Both.
Well, the Palm Coast area is part of the Florida
I
region,
understand
and the
that.
Mid-Coast is part of the South Florida region, so they work on different structures. The South
Yes,
Florida region works very similar to the World Service Conference, where they have consensus
Yeah,
based,
we're way over.
the consensus-based decision-making, and they don't call them committees, they call them task force, and they have strategic.
I know, I was
planning.
part of the people that put that together.
The thing
I'm very well aware.
Yeah,
of what
yeah,
they
so
did.
that's why they work
I
a little
find
different.
it interesting that we didn't see it on the PR, because it's different in Atlanta, some areas, like, I don't know how y'all do it in South Atlanta.
Well, they're gonna be doing another PR
Yeah.
But for
presentation.
PR, for
Yes.
some areas, phone
Right.
line is
What'd you do,
included,
extend the
and for
time?
other areas, phone line is its own thing.
Right.
Okay,
So if that kind of is like,
let me know when we're
it's
done.
all interesting, because
Yeah.
when you add a phone line in at writing steps in recovery in PR,
All right, about 30 more seconds.
add and take meetings in facilities as well.
They seem to be, you know,
Lot, I mean, that's
Yeah,
a
but
lot.
here's the thing is, if,
within about
especially
10
in my
miles,
area, we merged those
couple
two,
minutes right in our town.
because she was absolutely hit the nail on the head. It is not a meeting, it is a presentation.
Well, that's not a truism, right? The HMI handbook is a book of suggestions. And so every
Okay.
area is our comments to how they will.
Precisely.
All right, so at this point here, we're gonna ask you guys to just quickly, if you take 30 seconds, we're gonna go around the room, we're gonna just ask for some people in the chat also, before we share some of your perceived challenges in the fellowship between H&I and PR collaboration. So, I know I cut you off mid-sentence, but do you wanna go?
Mary Quinn.
Hi, I'm Mary Quinn, I'm an addict. I think one of the perceived challenges that I'm seeing in our particular area is the breakdown of technology. And so specifically, and this is, thank you, Angie reminded me of this, that within our area, what we're finding is that PR is iterating and building some really amazing systems and very effective systems utilizing technology. H&I and the trusted servants who are serving in H&I roles are not necessarily equipped with the tools and the knowledge of how to use those tools, how to use BMLT, for example, a basic meeting finder, how to use the phone lines, etc. And as the rotation of service happens, if there's not a continuity, which we saw, I know this isn't about the pandemic, but which we saw when people left seats during, like, kind of abruptly, and then someone new came in and there wasn't necessarily continuity or a training, so to speak. Then we have new people coming in trying to figure out what to do, but it's like building from the ground up.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Mary Quinn. I know that in Alabama, H&I, a facility requested a virtual meeting, and that committee had the technology challenges that you're talking about. So let me hear from some of you guys, what you just noticed as challenges before we talk about it, if there's anyone else that wants to share online about that before we go on.
My name is John C's the name, and I'm from South Atlanta area. And one of the things that I find in our area, especially since the pandemic has happened, right? It was hanging by a thread before the pandemic hit, which was getting PI to go in for H&I.
Can they hear online? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear.
Okay, great.
Was to get PI to go into the facilities. Now, when the pandemic hit, the hospitals and the institutions were, they wanted you to sign a release saying if you come in, they're not responsible for you having COVID. Some of them went even further, like they were having no contact. So now our PI has dissolved. And so did H&I to some degree. So now it's starting to pick up again. For example, we have a gentleman here today who's taking over the responsibility of being the South Atlanta area chair. And, I thought it'd be a good idea if he come here today, we get some information about virtual meeting and just how to even get into the institution when you're talking about taking a Zoom meeting, so to speak. If I can't come in because you need me to sign a certain statement, well, we don't have PI to call them up, say, hey, we'd like to do a virtual meeting or anything like that. Jail, same thing. So we're having real heavy issues on how to get back even in the buildings.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, the Nassau area H&I, they purchased some refurbished iPads with cables and they donated them to the facilities. I think Joanne is also familiar with
Yes.
that.
Yeah, they were letting people, believe it or not, around the world come and serve at H&I after they attended a training. So they actually had members of the fellowship that were H&I members of areas where their H&I meeting presentations had closed, and they were bringing presentations into Long Island where, but part of that is, and we're going to be doing a presentation later from H&I. It's really about the outreach part. It's about calling those facilities and saying, can we give you virtual presentation? Are you willing? What do you need? How can we help to do that? If they need the equipment, then asking for the area funds to do that, or, and definitely working in collaboration with public information to help with the technology part. Or there's going to be a technology workshop later on today. So there are members of the fellowship that are technologically savvy. So it's reaching out to those members to assist with the technology part. But the most important part is, guess what? Consistency and knocking on the door. Don't when you, I'm just going to say this, right? When you were using, if you went to the cop spot and the guy said, we don't got any tonight, did you go home and say, I wasn't going to get high? Or did you go look for another cop spot? It's the same thing in recovery. They say no, we're going to knock on the door again. We're going to come back an hour later. We're going to pack. When can I come back and contact you again?
So we have one person online that raised their hand.
We have Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana. I'm an addict from Arkansas in the RD. And my question, my feedback is, it says you were talking about the misconceptions of PR. And so in my area, actually in the previous area I moved out of, there's a misconception that PR is promoting instead of attracting, especially when we start looking at billboards or bus benches, those kinds of things. So there's just this misconception of, well, that's promoting so I can't figure out how to make them see it's not promoting, it's just public information.
And that's the key. How will they know how to find us if they don't know who we are and where we are? And that is all our responsibility to share at meetings or at our areas to make sure the newer members that are getting involved in service that understand the 11th tradition and understand that public information is not violating the 11th tradition by putting up poster boards or ads or any of those things that what we're doing is putting out information about our fellowship so people know who we are and know where to find us when they want to find us.
Okay, you, and then you guys.
Hi, family, my name is Angie, I'm an addict.
Hi,
I'm from
Angie.
the Fort Worth area of Narcotics Anonymous. And like we were talking about in our little small group here, is we're having the same issue. And our PR has totally gone bye-bye, and our regional PR. And we have groups that are getting really irate at the HRI committee. So we've got this invisible war that's becoming an actual war in the area service structure. And so as an RCM, my job is to facilitate solutions to them. And so we had a group, literally phone was ringing all last night into this morning, that's sitting on probably $20,000.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And they're like, let's just buy tablets for each night. And we approved it last night.
Wow.
Very
They're like,
nice.
They're gonna buy 10 tablets. I'm getting, I said, and I told them, I said, I can't do anything as an RCM. I'm a neutral party. I can bring you the Army to teach you guys how to do this, and we can bring a virtual presentation. And in the last 12 hours of me and my RCM being here and bringing up these challenges, like I've got PR people, and you're my next victim, by the way. just so you know. I say victim because I'm bringing you along for the ride. And I told my RCM.
No, I love it.
I was gonna say, she'll gladly get on board.
I'm grabbing all my army. I said, you provide the weapons for recovery, for addiction, we'll bring the Army.
Well, you know, the other
And
thing,
that's the thing, and he's like, well, this is H&I. I'm like, no, it is your job as the GSR to do, and your group to direct H&I. Like, there's the misconception here, and like.
yeah, I wanna just mention what you're saying and kind of support you. Years ago, at the area and group level, groups sent representatives to the subcommittees. So I know in Manhattan area, we have public information reps, and we announce in every area, please send a rep from your group to the subcommittee, not that you know, just to bring the information back.
We do in Texas as well, and that
Okay.
position has basically gone to the wayside.
Okay,
And we're incorporating the GSRs to like get, you know, because according to our group IP, the GSRs make up the subcommittees, and that's part of like the responsibilities of the GSR. And a group is autonomous, so if a group wants to send somebody to H&I or is a part of H&I and comes back to the group to report, we're throwing it back on the groups and saying, what do you all want to do? But we've got these groups and these facilities, and unfortunately, the H&I past chair was not technologically savvy, nor was she a believer in that a Zoom meeting was an actual NA meeting.
Oh, goodness.
So we had that, and she wasn't willing and open to learn. And I had to back away and let the process be, and now her predecessor is picking up what was left over from there. So we've got this interesting little triangle going on here. And so we've developed a plan now, like literally in the last 4 hours, this is like the text messages and the emails have been flying, is that we're gonna do a public information day on Zoom to all of the treatment facilities, all of the jails in our area. And we said, here we go, we're getting we can buy more if y'all need it. And we're gonna do this virtually, because the one thing that I think we're all missing is the institutions are going to Zoom meetings. They're finding the resources, because in my home group, we get institutions and jails that come to our home group
Yep.
virtual meeting all the time.
Yep, they're bringing them to open meetings, never mind.
Yeah,
They're
I
bringing
mean,
their,
they
they're
are
bringing their
there.
facilities.
And that's great, but how do we reach more? And so we give them the technology. I mean, I know a lot of areas are sitting on a lot of money because a lot of their subcommittees are spending the money. Let's use the money for some good and give them the technology, get NA to download the literature onto those tablets, and get the Zoom and teach them how to use Zoom and teach them how to find the virtual meetings. So at least they're going to meetings.
Right.
In like it spearheads that whole thing, and you know, they can get those connections for when they get out. And so like literally in the 15 hours that I've been in Atlanta, this all transpired.
Well, this is not over, and before I get to the other side of the room, I'm gonna encourage you, your southern zonal chair, Craig, is doing a big workshop this afternoon.
I'm going.
So you totally need to hook up with them, and the zonal H&I, she's gonna
Yeah.
also remind you of her subcommittee.
No, I'm on
So
the
you
H&I
can-
track and my
Okay.
RCMA is on the technology track.
So
We're getting both
yeah.
of them. I'm gonna
We
be
meet on
fine.
the- we meet on the fourth Sunday,
That's
it's-
actually amazing news about that purchase, and I'd like to I definitely want to sit in to see how you guys are gonna organize that. So this
So they
side,
have $3,000 to spend, so we're gonna buy as many tablets as we possibly humanly can with that $3,000.
Well, you should definitely look like what Nassau
already
did and
been
look for the
looking.
refurbished ones, which are a lot cheaper than the new
I'm
ones.
actually, our area's about to do a 501c3. We're
Okay.
about a few weeks away from being approved for that, so we're just gonna go the nonprofit route
Okay.
and get them through the nonprofit purchasing.
Okay, very good.
okay.
Great.
Well, you know what, I'm definitely gonna follow up.
Oh,
with
no,
you as
I'm
well.
gonna, we're friends on Facebook. I'm totally gonna be blowing you up.
Okay, well, let me hear from you guys in terms of what your perceptions have been.
Sure, I'm Amanda Manatic.
Hi, Amanda.
I don't see a whole lot of PR and H&I controversy between the two as far as my local area or region is concerned. There's a lot of collaboration that goes on, but from a personal perspective, I can definitely see if we're looking back 30 years, where H&I looks like it serves the accusal suffers and public relations is more of a promotion to the public. I can understand where the perspective is at. But having worked with public relations, I also see that it's a lot of the background, so it is still serving the accusal suffers, it's just quietly. And then
What's your local area?
I'm in Marietta.
Oh, Georgia, okay,
Yeah, Georgia region.
okay.
Greg Addick with our AD for volunteer region. And, you know, regionally, on the regional level, our PR is blowing up. I mean, it's from statewide, it's on fire where the H&I is dissolved, regional level. We get to the area level and our H&I is just going hog wild and there's very little PR.
Wow.
I mean, we've got all kinds of groups opening up, we got places asking for more of us to come in. We pretty much continued through the whole pandemic by doing, you know, the hybrid meetings or doing the Zoom meetings with the local facilities and things like that. And yeah, it's probably been about 8 months now since we've been able to go back into face-to-face meetings, and we're wanting to increase them and stuff too. So we also are working with the state of Tennessee to be vetted so that any of our representatives can go into any of the correctional facilities across the state for doing presentations and stuff like that. Right now, there's a little bit of difficulty dealing with the county jails, but the other ones are pretty well opened our success rate with going in there. And especially what they call DRC now, which is a daytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that in here?
It's in,
DRC?
yeah, it's in opposition to going to
Let's talk about the RCOs, except they're calling them DRCs.
DRC?
You sure it's not recovery centers, recovery RCOs, recovery center organizations?
no, it's DRC is for daytime,
Correction.
yeah, like court,
Oh,
But-
daytime,
drug court.
drug court.
but it's not actually a drug court. This is their,
Is it like a reentry program?
right, in
Okay.
and it's about a 2-year program for most people that are involved in it. So,
Oh, like a residential court
yeah,
farm
so they're
program?
not put into incarcerated during that time.
Oh, alternatives to prison,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That would be a better way of putting it. So,
Well-
yeah,
Well, what I'd like to say, sir, to you and to anyone who's here today, if you don't have regional support, the zone, the H&I zone is here to support anyone who needs support as far as coming together, talking about challenges, coming up with solutions, and just exchanging information so that we can grow. But we meet on the fourth Sunday at 7 o'clock. It's a virtual meeting. And anyone who feels like they'd like to get support or just more information or just be able to exchange information, that's what the committee is there for, because in lieu of having the regional committee, you have the zonal task force to help out with that. Okay,
Where do you get that login? Where do you get that login from?
I will make sure you guys get that before, it's gonna be up on the screen later on.
It's gonna be a whole different zone, but we'll chime in.
Yeah, no, well,
Because
okay,
collaboration is collaboration.
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna put my head down on this one, because I'm not bragging, but there is only one H&I task force leader in all the United States, and it's me.
I figured that.
So,
Okay, so basically, and I also went to social media and I posted, they have an H&I site and they have a PR site that are closed NA sites, and I post these questions. And so ultimately, what some people mentioned, obviously there's people that have, upwards of 30 years clean that came in here doing H&I. And initially it was called public information. So they actually, in terms of collaborating with PR, some of those members don't necessarily recognize PR as a format. They also they have feelings about when the world subcommittees were disbanding. In 1998, we used to have World H&I, World PI, World Outreach. Those subcommittees were
World
disbanded.
Literature.
Right, World Literature. So there are some people who,
never got over that.
Because and pardon me, I'm not totally clear on this, but I get emails to attend a World H&I meeting.
that's
what is
NAWS. NAWS has webinars. They have quarterly webinars. So there is a NAWS H&I webinar.
Yeah,
There's a NAWS PR webinar. They happen quarterly,
yeah.
and you can sign up to get that information. And then those are also international webinars. So I would totally encourage anybody to just find out what's going on in other parts of the planet. And you're gonna hear when the other H&I workshop is on, there are other parts of the world, they're going into multiple prisons and collaborating with public relations. So the other thing is, the part of the United States where I'm from, which is New York City and like the tri-state area, once again, you have members that have been doing public information for like upwards of 30 years, and they still call themselves public information as opposed to the umbrella services of PR. Now, PR in some places in the United States and different parts of the globe, H&I is underneath PR as part of a big umbrella, right? And actually, the way the PR handbook is set up, H&I is a subset of that. Don't come into Manhattan area and tell them that. They don't see themselves as a subset of anything. They are distinct. Public information, if you're in New York, Manhattan, Long Island, New Jersey, it's public information all day long. The other things that are under PR are website, meeting list, phone line. And in those particular parts of the country, all of those are separate committees. They're not under a big umbrella.
Okay.
So that's part of the perception of stumbling blocks with those levels of cooperation in those two committees. The other thing is there's definitely territorial rivalries in some places. In the area where I got clean in Brooklyn, I had the H&I subcommittee person yelling at me on the floor, telling me that didn't I realize how important H&I was, and PI doesn't do anything, and that's a paraphrase of the commentary. The other thing is that depending on whether people are included in learning days or so forth, there's like, oh, well, you didn't include us. Well, we're never going to include you in our learning day, right? You don't want to have H&I in the PR learning day. Well, we're not going to include you, right? And then the other thing is, I think in the United States, we have like a sports mentality, and we want to ascribe sports and military terms to some of our subcommittees. I know some people call PI the committee in the trenches. some people call H&I the committee on the front lines, right? So they put kind of an embedded competitiveness in different parts of the country with those terms. But ultimately, there are people that do both and switch back and forth. So
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone online has any of those experiences, but we wanted to just kind of flesh that out for you guys.
One of the things that I brought up when I spoke on leadership this morning that is really important when we do service, and that's personal recovery and continuing to do your own step work and working many times. And we meet new members, we meet new blood, and it's great when new members get involved with service. But there has to be a personal growth along with the person doing service. There's service-oriented recovery or recovery-oriented service. And they're not the same thing. Because if a person doing service is not working on their personal recovery and not growing in their personal lives, then what comes to the table is what that person brings with them, all those perceived challenges that we just talked about. So, at a lot of committees, these are the things that some committees have come up with, is actually when someone comes to present themselves for qualification, do you have a sponsor? Do you do step work? How many meetings do you attend a week? These all fall under the concepts of someone being qualified for what we ask them to do. In the concepts, it says that we need to make sure that a leader is prepared and has the ability to do those things. So when we're asking someone, how many meetings do you attend a week? Do you have a sponsor? Have you done step work? Do you have a knowledge of the concepts and the traditions? These are not bad, these are not wrong questions to ask, and they're not attacking questions. The kind of questions when we ask a person that is so that we can help that person grow along in that area and understand how important those things are to do service together and work together with each other.
So, okay, yeah, there's a little typo. That should say COVID imperative opportunities. I changed the slide, I'm gonna correct that. Between H&I and PR collaboration. So just like some people mentioned earlier where things were fizzling out, treatment centers completely shut down. There were also the former connections that H&I people had in facilities. Those people either got COVID, they went away, there were new hires. So now public, information or relations had to initiate new contacts with these treatment centers. And once again, that has to be done during the day. So like the panel leader that was showing up and their old contact isn't there, now they really kind of had to rely on public relations to make the phone calls between 9 and 5, to send an email. I know we did that in Manhattan area in order to, and they were like, yeah, we were waiting for you to contact us because we want to have virtual meetings. So that happened. Also, being able to send literature. Now there was also an issue with COVID. Some of the treatment centers didn't want paper meeting lists. They weren't accepting paper. A lot of public relations committees also created the QR codes to go into the meeting list and sent those in to go into the discharge packages. And also New Jersey Public Information, their region bought $5,000 worth of literature that they sent into the New Jersey State Correctional Facilities. That took several months. It was done through a joint ad hoc, but they had to actually do a lot of connecting with the people in corrections because they needed to make sure that the literature was going to be signed off appropriately, who was going to get it, where was it going to be distributed. So it's actually a long chain of contact, and that was the collaboration down there. And so the other ad hocs that were created between H&I and PR were to load this literature onto the tablets. It's actually, it's starting to pick up steam in the United States and internationally, but because of COVID, now the prisons are accepting free NA literature, but the issue is that you have to have World Services sign a contract with the tablet because of our Fellowship Intellectual Property Trust. You can't just say, oh, here's PDFs of our literature. It has to be very specific IPs and also introductory guide. They're not gonna just upload the whole basic text in digital form. So those are some of the things going on. So these were the 3 cases of the ad hoc committee collaboration for this tablet. Sarasota, Florida, I believe is the first place that got that literature loaded. I think that was, and Tom could probably correct me, Tom probably knows the actual date, because I think it was 2019. Arizona region was the next joint committee that did it on the regional level between H&I and public relations. I actually sat in on a bunch of those meetings where they collaborated. And now Arizona region, I think it's something like 40,000 inmates are getting Narcotics Anonymous literature in English and Spanish. Actually, this is a collaboration, Northern New Jersey and New Jersey region. It's 2 regions. They were not successful in getting the literature uploaded. Why? Because in portions of the United States, the tablets have yet to be upgraded to the next generation. You need, like, I think a level 6 of those tablets, and those prisons in the Northeast, they haven't spent money doing that. They haven't upgraded the tablets, so they don't even have the capacity to get the literature onto the tablets yet. So they're still working on all of that, but they did collaborate. Now, Central Ohio, I think, was one of the first to get it done, but that was a strict PR committee. That was not done with H&I. So this is actually Western states, so did actual 2 whole virtual forums. I attended both of them that were H&I PR collaborations. They were actually extremely well attended. I just wanted to put it up here because this was the only other format in the United States where they had a huge PR H&I collaboration, and it was all virtual. It was extremely well attended. I think there were over 80 people, which is a lot for like a service forum.
Yep, that is a lot.
So, and for anybody, I have the contact information for anybody that wants to get in touch with those people. Actually, they also did a really kick-ass professionals workshop with corrections and addiction counselors at the last Western State Zona Forum. So a big shout out to you guys. So, okay.
And I just want to say this, PR doing the professionals days is a great asset to H&I, because when professionals begin to hear of our success and that we are a proven program that works, their ears open up. You know, professional treatment centers, they get paid on outcomes and successful outcomes for their clients. So when they hear that we have a proven program that works, they become interested in Narcotics Anonymous. And H&I could never do, again, what we do, and without the help of the Public Relations Committee.
Mary put him in at it, and speaking as a member of Narcotics Anonymous, not a professional in any sense in the recovery community, there's so many acronyms forming these days, like the gentleman in the back mentioned, the D whatever. Like, I am so grateful to PR, because from an H&I perspective, like, I don't know the perspective of the professional. I don't know the landscape of all these different types of facilities, and whether, you know, I mean, we have a loose umbrella term in H&I that we carry meetings to individuals who can't regularly attend outside meetings. I don't even know what most of these places, what the condition is, like, if they can, if they can't.
But that's
What
part
that-
of, that's part of a committee's job. Well, it depends upon how many people you have to serve in your committee. Okay, but the first, because the handbook recommends first and foremost that the commitments that be filled are the ones where clients have no access. And then the next level of service in the handbook that recommends is limited access.
Right.
And we don't bring H&I presentations where people have open access unless you have so many volunteers in your area willing to serve, that those commitments have all been filled first before you do that. So
And
there
thank you
is,
for sharing
there
that.
is an order.
I think it's imperative that we utilize the collaboration. My point is that we utilize the collaboration between H&I and PR. in order to understand the landscape that we're serving. Because I can't even get to that level if I don't know what all these places are. And as an H&I subcommittee with already limited resources anyway, like we need PR, we need the,
connection.
yeah.
Yeah, do you bring up another interesting point? In Manhattan area, there are 17 commitments, but they're all on hold because of the Omicron variant. And no one's going in. Now, we had a daytime facility that services people in shelters. Right now, shelters are also people we don't reach out to often enough. But in this particular case, the people in the shelters, they were there at this facility during the day, but they had to go home because they had a curfew. So they were not even able to make the in-person meetings at night, and they requested an H&I meeting, but H&I felt that they didn't want to serve them because they could still get out. But, you know, this is where kind of Joanna's mentioning the guidelines and that the committee could decide to, because they wanted a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning at the facility. They wanted a regular meeting for those shelter clients.
Right.
But that committee decided it was outside of their policy. That was their decision.
Which is a group conscience, right? Like at the end of the day, it's group conscience is.
The policy though, the H&I guidelines are not cut and dry where it's set in stone. But it like, especially in the case that Wolvina just brought up, where you have a whole group of people willing to serve, but nobody to serve. At those points, then we have to become more open-minded to say, hey, there are addicts we can serve, but let's serve them at this particular time because we can serve them. The guidelines are just guidelines. The reason I brought up the level of how it's recommended through the handbook to do is that if we were able to come into facilities and those commitments were all filled, then we would have to say no to people that have either limited or they have access to outside, because that's how H&I was formed, for people that have no access to outside information about Narcotics Anonymous. But of course, the pandemic has changed everything. Change our landscape.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Since we have a very cross-section of different areas, different regions here, which I think is wonderful. The idea which just came to mind is, for my area, maybe it's time that my area come up with an inventory, like we inventory this or the state of H&I in my area, and I'm like brainstorming these questions based on what y'all are sharing. It's like, because our needs have changed so dramatically, what are our challenges? What are our needs? Who are we really serving? How are we serving them? And what do we need to get from, what do the facilities need from us, and turning that question back and saying, how can we better serve y'all, and let's adapt accordingly.
Well, I have a suggestion for you. If you go to the Northeast Zonal Forum Fellowship Development and ask them to create a digital survey for you and work with them on the questions, because when we did an inventory like that in public relations, we not only sent it through email, we could text the survey. It's a very, like, something that's not overwhelming, like no more than 10 questions that you can just click on in 5 minutes. You can ask the Northeast Zonal FD to help you guys
Well, I'm
create
now
that.
part of the Northeast Zone, because I just moved up into that area, but I'm
So,
serving.
yeah, just so go
I'm gonna
online
totally go
and
there.
ask them, and then when you get the actual survey, you can not only email it out to your GSRs, put it on the website, you can text it individually to people. And then, you know, it would probably take maybe 2 months to get that survey, you know, and then follow up. But that is 100% the way to direct your resources. And I did just wanna bring your attention, if you don't already know, who your zonal PR chair is. He just walked into the room. This is Craig. They just mentioned they're gonna need your help because their region actually bought, I think they're using 20,000.
No, we had a home group
Yeah.
that is dedicating $3,000 to buy tablets to put into facilities.
So yeah, you need to be working with them and go to their workshop later.
Yeah, and again, later on, when we have the H&I workshop later on today, we are gonna be talking about H&I before, during, and after COVID, because one of the things that has happened is people got too comfortable that everybody wanted Narcotics Anonymous, so unfortunately, a lot of areas and subcommittees are sitting back waiting for the facilities to call and say, come
Right.
back now.
Right.
You know, we want you back.
Yeah, well, the point is so that they're not going to just reach out and say, come
No,
back.
they're not.
They
They're not.
they
They're
have to get that initiation, because people are new and also their schedules change. COVID also impacted the schedules of when H&I meetings are gonna be available to clients. So the same meeting times are also not available. So that's also something you guys are gonna have to consider. Yeah,
One more thing.
Please.
Also, if what happens repeatedly being set around the area, is that the powers that these in the different institutions are turning over just as fast.
Yep.
One person said, well, call me back next week, you call me back next week, and it's a new person.
Yeah.
correct.
So we have that issue a lot.
Right, but that's why that's why the commitment and keep plugging away until you get we're gonna talk about, it was mentioned before, the word champion, but you gotta find some champions
Yeah.
that are gonna get on your side,
Right.
that, you know, in any of those facilities and, you know, work on the behalf of the committee.
So yeah, just to quickly go through this slide, it's definitely important to attend each other's subcommittees. Now, it is a little labor intensive depending on when they meet, especially if you say to yourself, oh my God, another subcommittee meeting. Because actually, on a personal level, my entire weekdays are filled with subcommittee meetings, like my home group meets at 10:30 at night virtually, because otherwise I wouldn't be able, because that's how many subcommittee meetings that I attend, in addition to collaborating with E&A, which is not on there. Because events and activities,
Okay.
events and activities in an area, because if public relations wants to do a street fair or also attending other events, which is the last thing here, they're joint events. You know, my first H&I workshop, I was new, I had under 90 days, I was at a dance, and I stumbled into an H&I workshop at a dance that was being held in the afternoon. Because I wouldn't have even known it existed if it didn't happen in conjunction with another regular recovery event. So
In the South Florida region, we have an area, Gold Coast. When they have their convention, they actually have a notary there, and they have the signups for the prisons. And what they actually, at the convention, anyone who wants to get involved in serving at a prison can come to that meeting, and they can sign up, they can get the training, and their application will be
Yes.
notarized by a notary right there. So that's, you know, something again that can be done with collaboration as well.
And then Craig,
Hey, Craig.
I just wanted to throw in, first of all, can we just say combined instead of joined? Anyhow, that's just personal, but also, one of the things that we have done, like in my home area, we have a fellowship development committee. We don't have separate, so all of our service committees meet at the same time together. So we never have a committee of one, and everything we do, all the members that participate are learning all the different aspects of service. But when we do our activities committee is going to help PR. We're going to set up a booth and cook hot dogs and stuff at a homeless shelter and pass out pamphlets and so forth, right? So it's activities and PR. We do every single meeting that we do to any facility. H&I and PR go in together and have those conversations. And it's really cool because we do a great job. The PR chair speaks about who we are, what we do. The H&I chair answers and speaks to all the questions about how the H&I meeting is going to take place and find out what rules and so forth that we have to meet. So there's that collaboration. It's really made a big difference also in the number of people that are participating and serving. And something you guys said earlier about some of these facilities not calling us. In page 207 of It Works, which is what we use as the foundation of how we do our public relations, it says, principle of service critical to the application of our 11th tradition is not a passive principle. To be of maximum service to the still suffering addict, we must energetically seek to carry our message throughout our cities, towns, and villages. Our
You gotta
public
remember
relations
that one,
policy-
Craig.
Our
Thank you.
public relations policy is based on attraction, to be sure, not promotion, but to attract the still suffering addict to our program, we must take vigorous steps to make our program widely known. People aren't gonna call a helpline, they don't even know who the hell they're calling, or what we are. You know, we do presentations all the time, and people don't even know what Narcotics Anonymous is, so how are they gonna stop and go, gee, I think there's a program out there to help drug addicts, who are we, let me call it, you know?
One of the big problems, and thank you very much for that, Craig, and there are two things that I'd like to kind of challenges that our fellowship, I believe, have right now. Number one, a great many members of our fellowship, every area, region, or whatever, utilizes fellowship development in a very different way, shape, and form. And there are still some areas and regions that don't want to have anything to do with fellowship development, don't know what fellowship development means, and don't want to learn what it means. That's number one. You know, and the other thing is the comfortability factor that I talked about before. Our proven program of Narcotics Anonymous has been so successful, and for many years, H&I subcommittees were overwhelmed by professionals calling them and begging them and asking them, please, we need a presentation. Can you make room on your committee list for us? So this has been a shift in thought process. COVID and it has changed. And then we have, of course, the aging fellowship and many experienced members who now cannot or will not serve for various reasons, which I will not say they're wrong for, but at the same time, we have lost a vital part of our fellowship because many members with time will not put their personal health at risk. So there are definitely many challenges that we as a fellowship moving forward have to talk about, have to come up with solutions for.
I just wanted to comment why we was talking about the fellowship waiting on, you know, H&I waiting on the facility to contact us. Well, what we ran into is we had coordinators, facility coordinators, and their correspondence with the facilities. They either get, with the COVID going on, they get disinterested and don't do their job. The area, I mean, the area H&I chair doesn't follow up on that. So you got lack of continuity in doing what he just read. And at the same time, guess what we got in the mail the other day? And we got in the mail Friday applications for the jail that the facilitator, I mean, the coordinator was not in contact with us. She didn't even know that they were sending out applications. Everybody has to be
clearances.
Right, for clearances. They were setting up an orientation. I got it Friday and they wanted it back Monday. And I was like, what the freak? So
That was the absolute deadline too.
that was their deadline. Now, we had H&I, we got that Monday, we had H&I and we talked to them and now we found out they gave us an extension to Friday. And I was like, that.
Yeah, wow, okay. So, yeah, on the regional level, this is some points of collaboration that some of you guys might be aware of. We already talked about contacting State Department of Corrections, but the other thing, I know in the tri-state region, they've done full-on prison awareness days there. And so that takes a lot of collaboration. That's where you go into the prison for the entire day. It may be Narcotics Anonymous alone, but it could be with other fellowships. And that they actually have a bunch of speaker meetings, do a whole roundup of presentations to set up programs there. That takes a lot of collaboration between the prison. The other thing is, and I mean, I also feel like this is kind of where the ball has been dropped, especially virtually. We still have a lot of conventions happen. How many conventions in the United States have streaming from the prisons, main meetings? Not a lot, right? I remember when I first went to the London convention a couple of years ago. It's actually coming up again this April. They customarily stream to a couple of prisons, and you can see the inmates online, and they're jumping up and screaming at the main meeting. It almost really wants to bring you to tears to see that. We need
that world.
Yeah.
Doing it in that world now.
Well, we need to be doing it at every freaking convention, if you ask me. And that, once again, this is actually collaboration between convention committees, because many convention committees are so resistant to any other level of service. You talk about territorial and rivalries, they're very close to being open to these kind of possibilities, and also whatever types of costs that it takes to set these kinds of things up. Just at this event, the cost that it's taken for this kind of audiovisual equipment, conventions are sometimes are not really open to setting up the kind of streaming that it will take for their main meetings, right? So the other thing is, for some people that don't know this acronym, HIPIC, it's a convention committee term. H&I, Public Information Committee, they work specifically on convention committees. The HIPIC's job is to reach out to treatment and to provide a certain number of packages for free for those people in treatment to take a bus to the convention, to get those newcomer packets at however many, 20, 50, whatever it is, to a bunch of different treatment centers. And I actually found out, my home group in California, they actually bring inmates to their conventions, right? They had I got a picture of it because I actually didn't believe it. They had the orange jumpsuits on, and they bought them convention shirts so that they wouldn't feel so like spotlighted that they're prisoners.
Does that too.
And that's actually where this collaboration needs to be happening, right? To do those kinds of
And
things.
also a lot of times what HIPIC will do at conventions is they will find qualified members that can speak and bring them to facilities where the clients are not allowed, because a lot of the facilities still will not bring their members to the convention. So being that there are so many members at the convention, what they will do is they will get some volunteers to leave the convention and bring them to the facility. I did that one time, by the way, and share your experience, strength, and hope at that particular place. And what that does, it brings in a fresh face. And what it also could do to someone who's maybe never spoke at H&I, light that fire of wanting to do H&I, because once you do that, it does light your fire and make you think that, wow, this is something I might want to get more involved with and do as well. And this is like a side point, the South Florida region, what we do at our regional convention is we actually have basic texts that we purchase for the prisons, and we have members pay $10 for the book, sign the book. We put them back in the case and we then deliver them to the prisons after the convention.
What does that HIPIC stand mean?
HIPIC, it stands for H&I
PI,
Public
yeah,
Information
HIPI
Convention Committee. So it's actually a committee of the convention. That's a joint committee reaching out specifically to treatment.
Yeah, usually what usually consists of maybe 2 H&I members and 2 PI members that gather together and they work on a plan of and this is where PI is really important, sending letters to the facilities in the area where the convention is at. Usually the convention committee will give the HIPIC committee a certain amount of free packages to give out to those particular facilities. So then the whole thing is sending letters. Can you bring any of your, bring them, and then with the letters, and if they do, then we send the packages to those people to come to the convention. And they come for free.
Yeah, the other thing we didn't really mention, but it's totally happened to me in my local area. The H&I people do not want to readily give up their treatment center information to you, right? I mean, we've asked them, you know, we wanted to mail some cards out, and they were like, you send us the cards, because they didn't want to give us. So that's the other reason why H&I is involved on the high pick level, because they have all of the treatment center information. And then PI doesn't want to go back in and kind of double dip to facilities that they've already been in contact with, that they already have a contact. So that was the other thing. Yeah.
So in the.
Question a
same
minute.
token-
Can I get a question?
ahead,
Just a
Susan.
minute.
No, it's
Actually, I'd like to share a success story for a second.
Please.
So PR and H&I got together in Brazil, and they did PR presentations to the national government, and they got in to the entire prison system of the nation. They then went and organized where they have, and I'll talk more about this at my presentation later, but I wanted to share the success story. They actually have Zoom meetings that go on every day, and every prison in Brazil gets to Zoom in. So every single prisoner gets a meeting every single day. They pass and they collaborate across all the areas so that different areas do the meetings and all the prisons Zoom in. Australia does something similar, and the Latin American zone is starting to do some of the same stuff. They organized a zonal system, and they have 51 prisons every week Zoom into them. So it can work really well.
Yeah, I spoke on one of those meetings, Tom, and you can see the inmates sitting there, and it's pretty, you know, you can tell also as an addict, people's body language when they're really like receiving what they're hearing. And even though what I said was translated, you could see the people paying attention. So yeah, thank you so much, Tom. And that's actually gonna lead into like our orange bullet point. But on the zonal collaboration between H&I and PR, here's our biggest challenge too. A lot of our regions are broke ass, let's just say that, right?
They don't have money.
So the point is that on a regional level, we can't attend a lot of these professional conferences like drug court, because it's, you know, either we don't have the money, or our fellowship chooses not to vote to pay for those things. Some of those things are $500 a shot, so $1,000 a shot for like an entire day of a table they're sitting. I know in the New England region, they do it every single year, New Jersey as well, but those regions they historically have put that kind of money behind their public relations and H&I service efforts. So the zone, here's the thing, through a zone, if you have regions who are contributing for an effort, let's say, for example, in your region, you've identified a couple of conferences. I really feel like on the zonal level, if people find out in different regions that there's going to be a conference, I really feel like that those regions would bring their resources to bear, share banners, table covers, perhaps like donate towards the cost of those conferences in order to be able to show up, send literature, contribute literature. And also in the case of New England Drug Court, they asked for the tri-state regions to send cards, because not all of those inmate people are actually from those regions. When they get out of prison, they need other surrounding helpline information. So that's how a zone can actually collaborate to do those joint conference table sittings. And in some cases at these conferences, they let you also have a conference room. I've actually heard of mock Narcotics Anonymous meetings happening at addiction conferences so that people can actually, the professionals can actually see a mock meeting in action, right? But that takes money to get a conference room. The other thing, and I'm gonna follow up with Tom and those people in Latin America. In New York State, we are just not doing anything with corrections. Forget JPay, our clearances are jacked up. There's no virtual meetings anywhere. There's no virtual meetings going into any prisons in the Northeast. If we actually had a portfolio of commendation letters, if we had a letter from Mexico or the Latin America or any of these prisons in Arizona, if we had a letter saying Narcotics Anonymous is going in virtually, here's how they're doing it, it was signed off by the prison. And now if we brought those to the prisons in the Northeast, in Connecticut, I've been actually communicating with the Connecticut deputy warden for the last 2 years, still trying to get that JPay literature. I think if I was able to bring a series of letters from across the country and she was able to put that on the desk of the warden, or if I was able to show those letters to our new governor in New York State, I think we could get some stuff done. Those are zonal efforts to get those portfolio letters created. And so finally, doing international joint collaborations, and I'm gonna let Joanne talk about that because there is one.
We
that's
have one
coming up.
coming up. We want to have one coming up on March 12th. And H&I Zone has been collaborating with Russia and Israel. It appears that the members of H&I in Russia and Israel are very interested in having an information exchange. They sent a group of questions to us about how we do certain things. And then they asked us if we had any questions for them and how they were doing things. And they also, especially in Russia, have their own challenges. But what I find very refreshing from these two countries is how open they are to come to the United States and initiate an exchange. I don't know how open we are to go to other countries and initiate exchanges with them. I've also participated with Iran a few times in bringing H&I like information about H&I, encouraging women in Iran to get involved with H&I, because obviously in Iran, women have some issues there. So, you know, we're needed. We have to wrap it up. By
Yeah,
the way.
the last 2 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Please. So I don't know if anybody knows this, but the newest associate director of SAMHSA, which is the National
Yes,
Substance Abuse, like, you don't know that acronym, he's one of us.
Okay, that's good to know.
He just got appointed, he's the associate director. He actually lives in his home, he's telecommuting right now. He's in Rhode Island. And he has been very vocal about helping us get into places we can't get into.
Okay.
There's a
well,
contact
know
for
what?
you,
Share that
Wilhelmina.
information with me.
So I'm just telling you, if you're having these huge issues, like, reach out to him. His name is Tom Kadir.
Well, you can just message me that on Instant Messenger. But I did want to say the other zones have conventions and they regularly do H&I PR presentations there. So I went to Asia Pacific Forum in person. I've been there twice. They have professionals days. European delegates this year is meeting in Cairo in September. They always have a professionals day there. The last one they did was in Switzerland. They do it every time. So actually Latin American Forum is in May. It's in Cusco. They're gonna have a big presentation to the government. I think I'm gonna try to head over there. And you know what? These people they're doing amazing work. So collaborating with these zones we have a lot to learn from them. So that's what I wanted to.
We're gonna end this workshop, but I do want to say one thing as we end. I would like to give Rowena a hand for her commitment.
Yeah.
Spending 2 years to work on getting into a prison is something to be commended upon. I'd like us all to give her a hand for her.
We're not in
hard
there
work.
yet.
Thank you.
Ladies, for your
Yes,
presentation.
and thank you for attending with us today. We hope to be of service and help anybody out that can use our assistance to please let us know. I'd be happy to give you my contact information. Sure, Rowena will be happy to give you hers.